September 11th, 2001. It's one of those dates, right? It's just etched into the memory of pretty much the whole world. And the thing is, the events of that single day were so huge that their shockwaves literally created a new reality for us all. A reality we're still trying to figure out, even today.
And that's not being dramatic at all. I mean, think about it. The choices made on that one day, and in the weeks and months that followed, they have consequences that ripple into our everyday lives, even now, more than 2 decades later. We're talking about everything, from how we fly on a plane, to that constant tug of war between our safety and our personal freedom. Okay, so let's just rewind for a second. Picture it. It started out as a totally normal Tuesday morning. I mean, people were commuting to work, kids were sitting in their classrooms. The sky over the East Coast was this beautiful clear blue. But in less than 2 hours, just 2 hours, that entire sense of normal was just gone, shattered forever.
What's just mind-blowing is how fast it all happened. At 8:46 a.m., boom, the first plane hits the North Tower. For the next 17 minutes, nobody really knew what was going on. Most people thought it had to be a terrible, tragic accident. And then at 9:03, the second plane hits the South Tower, and this time it's broadcast on live TV. That was the moment the world knew. This was an attack. And it didn't stop. In the next hour, another plane hits the Pentagon, and a fourth goes down in Pennsylvania. 4 coordinated attacks, all of it unfolding in just 102 minutes. It's almost unbelievable.
So while all of this is going on, where's the president? George W. Bush was actually visiting a second-grade classroom down in Florida. You've probably seen the footage. His chief of staff leans in and whispers those chilling words right into his ear. America is under attack. He said later he tried to stay calm for the kids, but can you even imagine? In that one moment, right there in that classroom, the entire world was changing.
You know, that morning was this incredible, heartbreaking mix of chaos and pure courage. On one hand, you had these tragic moments of confusion. There was actually an announcement telling people in the South Tower, which was still standing, to go back to their offices. Just tragic. But then, in the middle of all that terror, you see this unbelievable bravery. The passengers on Flight 93, they started making phone calls, figuring out what was happening, and they took a vote. A vote. They decided to fight back. And because of them, that plane never reached its target, which was most likely somewhere in Washington, D.C.
So as the world watched the towers fall, everyone was asking the same things. How? How could something like this happen? And who did this? Because this wasn't random. Not at all. This was planned down to the minute. And to really get our heads around that day, we have to look at the history that led right up to it. The answer to who was a group called Al-Qaeda, a global terrorist network. And its leader was a man named Osama bin Laden, who pretty much overnight became the most wanted person on Earth. But here's the thing, he didn't just appear out of thin air. His journey, the path that led him to 9/11, actually started decades before.
Yeah, this road to 9/11, it's a long one. For bin Laden, you can trace it back to 1979, when he was in Afghanistan fighting against the Soviets. Fast forward to 1988, and that's when he creates Al-Qaeda. But the real turning point, the thing that really set him on this path, was in 1990. That's when US troops arrived in his home country of Saudi Arabia, home to Islam's holiest sites. For him, this was a massive insult, a violation, and it became his central complaint, his main grievance. From there, the attacks just escalated. There was the first bombing at the World Trade Center back in '93, and then in 1998, he basically issued a fatwa, a formal declaration of war calling for the killing of American civilians.
So what was their reasoning? I mean, Al-Qaeda was actually very public about its motivations. Their list of grievances included, first and foremost, the US military presence on the Arabian Peninsula. They also pointed to American support for Israel and the tough sanctions that were placed on Iraq after the Gulf War. From their perspective, they were retaliating against what they saw as American interference and aggression in the Muslim world.
So bin Laden was the leader, right? The face of the organization, the money man. But the actual nuts and bolts of the 9/11 plot, that was largely the work of this man, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. The official 9/11 Commission report calls him the principal architect. He was the guy who figured out all the logistics, how to hijack 4 planes at once and turn them into guided missiles.
So the attacks themselves were over in just a couple of hours, but the consequences? They're still going. In fact, you could argue they've pretty much defined the 21st century so far. The world we live in today is, in so many ways, a post-9/11 world.
And the first response was, of course, a military one. The US kicked off the War on Terror, this massive global effort to take down al-Qaeda. That led directly to a 20-year-long war in Afghanistan to get rid of the Taliban who were protecting them. And a couple years later, it led to the really controversial invasion of Iraq in 2003.
For most of us, though, the biggest change we see in our daily lives is at the airport. It's almost hard to imagine now, but before 9/11, you could just show up like 30 minutes before your flight. Security was minimal. After, everything changed. Now we have full-body scanners, cockpit doors that are basically bomb-proof, taking off our shoes, the whole liquid restriction thing. All of that became the new normal for flying, and it's never gone back.
And it wasn't just airport security. Just 6 weeks after the attacks, 6 weeks, the US Congress passed something called the Patriot Act. It was rushed through, and it gave the government these huge, sweeping new powers to spy on its own citizens, all in the name of national security. And as you can imagine, that kicked off a massive debate about privacy versus security that is still going on today.
The fallout from 9/11 wasn't just about laws and wars. It was felt on the streets, too. In 2001 alone, the number of reported hate crimes against Muslims in the US just skyrocketed to 481. That is a staggering jump from the year before. Suddenly, anyone who was Muslim, or Sikh, or South Asian, or frankly anyone who just looked like they might be, was a target. So many innocent people ended up paying a terrible price for what a handful of extremists did. So you have these wars overseas, you have fear and division at home, and all of this brings us to what might be the hardest part of the 9/11 legacy to talk about. The attacks didn't just happen in a vacuum. They kicked off this chain reaction, this cycle of violence that has been so hard to stop. It's a really old and tragic idea, right? Extremism just breeds more extremism. You know, the whole an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind thing. When you answer violence with more violence, it almost never solves the problem. Usually it just pours gasoline on the fire and fuels the next wave of hate. And that's pretty much the downward spiral we've seen play out since 9/11. Let's break it down. Step 1. Al-Qaeda attacks the US, saying it's revenge for past injustices. Step 2. The US hits back with the War on Terror, which, even when it's targeting terrorists, still causes civilian casualties. And then step 3. The anger and grief from those deaths becomes the #1 recruiting tool for the next extremist group. It just creates this tragic looping cycle. So here we are, over 20 years later, and we're still wrestling with the biggest question that 9/11 left behind. In the fight against terrorism, where do you draw the line between being safe and being free? How much of our freedom are we willing to trade for a feeling of security? There is absolutely no easy answer to that, and it's a question that we, and every country around the world, are still trying to figure out.